Wake her, and you answer to me." Alpha King Alexander Blackwood's voice cut through the great hall, and every wolf in Blackridge went still. Clara Bennett lay asleep in his arms beneath the silver arches of the mating ceremony, her cheek resting against the black fabric of his ceremonial coat, as though the entire pack had disappeared. A moment earlier, hundreds of guests had been whispering. Now even the musicians had lowered their instruments. Elder Samuel Hayes held a silver cup frozen halfway above the altar. Near the front row, Vanessa Whitmore stared at Clara with disbelief sharpened into anger. No Omega had ever interrupted the most sacred ceremony of the year. No woman had ever fallen asleep against the Alpha King before he had spoken the words of selection. Yet Alexander did not push her away. He adjusted one arm beneath her shoulders and drew the edge of his cloak around her trembling body. A royal guard stepped forward. "Your Majesty, shall I remove her?" Alexander lifted his silver-gray eyes. The guard stopped. "She stays." Clara did not hear him. For the first time in 93 nights, she heard nothing at all. No racing thoughts. No frightened wolf pacing inside her mind. No invisible voice urging her to run before the darkness found her. There was only a slow heartbeat beneath her ear. Strong. Steady. Safe. Alexander looked down at the young woman sleeping against him. She was 27, dressed in a modest gray-blue gown that marked neither wealth nor rank. Chestnut hair had slipped loose from its simple pins. Exhaustion had left shadows beneath her blue-gray eyes, but even in sleep, her face held a quiet dignity. He had seen beautiful women arrive from every powerful pack in the Northern Territories. None had silenced his wolf. Clara had done it without speaking. Vanessa stepped from the line of chosen candidates. Her white ceremonial dress reflected the moonlight pouring through the high windows. "She is making a mockery of the ritual," she said. "An Omega who cannot remain conscious does not belong before the throne." Alexander's expression did not change. A woman collapsing from exhaustion is not entertainment. "She planned this," Vanessa insisted. "She wants attention." Clara shifted in his arms, and her fingers closed weakly around the front of his coat. The movement was small, but something ancient stirred beneath Alexander's skin. His wolf, restless for years, lowered its head in recognition. "Mine," it whispered. Alexander's jaw tightened. He had trusted instinct in war, judgment in counsel, and nothing in matters of fate. Yet the scent beneath Clara's exhaustion was unmistakable. Winter rain, cedar smoke, home. Then another smell reached him. Bitter silver herbs. He glanced toward the high collar of Clara's dress. A single thread gleamed there, too bright to be ordinary embroidery. Elder Hayes saw it too. His face lost color. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "do not let anyone remove that thread." Alexander looked toward the doors. "Seal the hall." The royal guards obeyed at once. Heavy doors closed, cutting off every exit. Whispers moved through the pack again, lower now, fearful. Vanessa took one step backward. Alexander noticed. So did Clara's wolf. Still asleep, she pressed closer to his chest, as though some part of her understood that danger had followed her into the ceremony. Alexander carried her toward the throne. 10 hours earlier, Clara had stood alone in a narrow room at the edge of the citadel, holding that same silver thread between two fingers and wondering who had sewn it into her dress. Clara stood beside the narrow window of her guest room, turning the silver thread beneath the morning light. It had been sewn into the high collar of her gray-blue ceremonial dress during the night. She was certain of it. The seam had been plain when she folded the gown before bed, but now a bright line curved beneath the fabric like frost trapped in cloth. She should have called a servant. She should have refused to wear it. Instead, she heard footsteps in the corridor and quickly lowered the collar. Omegas who questioned ceremonial garments were often accused of seeking attention. Clara had learned to survive by making herself smaller than the problem. 93 nights without real sleep had taught her that silence was easier than explanation. Every time she closed her eyes, her wolf paced inside her mind, restless and afraid. Sometimes Clara saw a red moon above a black forest. Sometimes she heard branches moving behind her. And sometimes, just before she woke, a man's voice reached through the darkness. "Find me before the moon turns red." She had never seen his face. She knew only the weight of that voice. Deep, controlled, familiar in a way that frightened her more than the dream itself. A knock sounded. Clara released the thread. Dr. Evelyn Moore entered carrying a small wooden case and a cup of herbal tea. The royal healer was a calm woman in her early 50s, with silver beginning at her temples and kind brown eyes that missed very little. "You look worse than yesterday," she said. Clara managed a faint smile. "That is becoming a tradition." Evelyn placed 2 fingers against Clara's wrist. "Your pulse is too fast. The ceremony will be over by midnight. You should not attend." Clara looked toward the folded invitation on the table. Her name appeared at the bottom of the candidate list, written in smaller ink than the others. 3 weeks earlier, the council had rejected her application. 2 weeks later, a new summons arrived without explanation. "If I refuse, they will say the broken Omega was too weak to stand before the king." Evelyn's expression tightened at the cruel name. "You are exhausted. You are not broken." Clara wanted to believe her. She lifted the cup, but the scent stopped her. Bitter herbs. Metallic. Almost like cold rain on silver. "Is this the same tonic as yesterday?" Evelyn took the cup from her and smelled it. Her face changed. "I did not prepare this." The room became very still. Clara looked toward the door. A servant had left the tea before Evelyn arrived. "What is in it?" "I cannot say without testing it." Evelyn poured the liquid into a small glass vial. "Do not eat or drink anything that did not come directly from me." Another knock interrupted them. This time Vanessa Whitmore entered without waiting. Her white dress was unfinished, silver pins lining one sleeve while 2 attendants followed with ribbons and jewelry. Vanessa's gaze moved from the healer to Clara's plain gown. "Still trying to recover enough strength to embarrass yourself publicly?" Clara straightened. "I did not invite you." Vanessa smiled. "No, the council did." She walked closer and adjusted Clara's collar with 2 careful fingers. The silver thread warmed instantly against Clara's skin. "There. Much better." Clara stepped back. "Did you have this altered?" Every candidate's clothing was inspected. Vanessa's smile did not reach her eyes. The Alpha King notices details. After she left, Clara touched the collar again. Beneath the fabric, the thread seemed to pulse. Evelyn reached for her examination scissors. "Take off the dress." A ceremonial bell rang before Clara could move. 3 sharp notes rolled through the citadel, announcing that all candidates had to report to the Great Hall. Footsteps filled the corridor. Guards began directing the women downstairs. Clara looked at Evelyn. "Can you remove it now?" Evelyn tried to cut the thread, but the silver edge resisted the blade. A faint chill spread across Clara's throat. Then the man's voice returned inside her mind, clearer than it had ever been. "Do not let them hide you from me." Clara followed the other candidates into the Great Hall with the silver thread cold against her throat. Blackridge Citadel had been transformed for the ceremony. Hundreds of candles burned beneath vaulted stone arches. Silver banners hung between carved pillars. At the far end of the room, the royal throne stood beneath an open circle of moonlight. Women from powerful packs waited in jeweled gowns, surrounded by mothers, advisors, and servants. Clara had no one beside her. An attendant checked the list, looked at her name, and pointed toward the final place in line. "Back row." Clara obeyed. The label had followed her for years. Omega. Unranked. Unclaimed. Broken. She placed both hands in front of her and tried to steady them. The silver thread pulsed once beneath her collar. Her wolf recoiled. Across the hall, Vanessa stood near the altar in white and silver, laughing softly with the daughters of 2 northern alphas. When she noticed Clara, she raised her voice just enough for those nearby to hear. "They invited everyone this year." A few women smiled. "Perhaps the council feared empty space," another said. Clara kept her eyes forward. Sleep pulled at her like deep water. The bitter herbs she had unknowingly consumed over the past weeks still moved through her body, slowing her thoughts while refusing to let her rest. She counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. The hall blurred, then sharpened again. Vanessa approached with her attendants behind her. "You should leave before the king arrives," she said. Falling asleep in a hallway is embarrassing. Falling asleep during a royal ceremony would be unforgivable. Clara met her gaze. "Then you should have nothing to worry about." Vanessa's smile tightened. "Confidence does not suit you. Neither does cruelty." The reply left Clara before caution could stop it. Nearby conversations faded. Vanessa stepped closer, but the first ceremonial horn sounded from beyond the doors. Every candidate turned. The great entrance opened. Alpha King Alexander Blackwood entered beneath the royal crest, followed by Elder Hayes and the council. At 39, Alexander carried authority without effort. He stood 6 feet 4 inches tall, broad-shouldered beneath a black ceremonial coat trimmed in silver. His dark hair was brushed back from a strong, composed face, and his silver-gray eyes moved across the hall with the patience of a man accustomed to being watched. The entire pack bowed. Clara lowered her head with the others. The moment Alexander crossed the threshold, something inside her became quiet. Her wolf stopped pacing. The pressure behind her eyes eased. Even the silver thread seemed to lose its hold for one brief second. Clara inhaled. Cedar smoke. Winter air. The scent from her dreams. She raised her head before permission was given. Alexander had stopped walking. His gaze moved past the first row of noble women, past Vanessa in white, and settled on Clara at the back of the hall. The distance between them was nearly 100 feet, yet she felt seen with frightening clarity. His wolf stirred beneath his control, not with aggression, but recognition. Then the scent around her fractured. Beneath cedar and winter air came the bitter trace of silver herbs. Alexander's expression hardened. Elder Hayes leaned toward him. Your Majesty? Alexander continued forward, but his attention never fully left Clara. One by one, he passed the candidates. Vanessa straightened when he approached, certain he would stop. He did not. He walked beyond her, beyond the daughters of Alphas, beyond the women chosen by the council. When he reached the final row, Clara's knees weakened. Alexander stopped 3 feet in front of her. The noise inside her mind disappeared completely. For the first time in 93 days, her body believed it was safe enough to rest. Your name? He said. Vanessa answered from behind him. Clara Bennett. She is only an Omega included to complete the ceremony. Alexander did not look away from Clara. I asked her. Clara opened her mouth, but the room tilted. The silver thread burned cold against her skin. Alexander reached toward her collar, and his fingers stopped inches from the hidden seam. Who dressed you? He asked. Before Clara could answer, Vanessa's reflection appeared in the polished silver pillar beside them, watching with fear rather than jealousy. Clara forced herself to remain upright beneath Alexander's gaze. The ceremonial attendants prepared the dress, she said, though her voice came out softer than she intended. Lady Vanessa inspected it this morning. A quiet tension passed through the final row. Alexander turned his head slightly. Vanessa's frightened reflection vanished from the silver pillar as she arranged her expression into calm concern. Every candidate was inspected, she said. The council required it. Elder Hayes approached, his attention fixed on Clara's collar. May I see the seam? Clara hesitated. Hundreds of eyes were already studying her, as though she had committed some offense merely by being noticed. Alexander lowered his hand. Only with her permission. The word surprised her. No ranked wolf had asked an Omega for permission in the middle of a royal ceremony. Clara lifted her chin and loosened the collar herself. The silver thread caught the moonlight. Elder Hayes drew a slow breath. This is not decorative. Vanessa laughed lightly. It is a common ceremonial stitch. No, Alexander said. He stood close enough that Clara could feel warmth beneath the winter scent surrounding him. It is masking something. His wolf pressed against his control, alert now, searching for the bond hidden beneath bitter herbs and enchanted silver. Clara's heartbeat quickened. The room began to tilt again. She steadied herself against the back of a carved chair. Alexander noticed. When did you last sleep? Last night, Clara answered automatically. Dr. Evelyn's warning echoed inside her. You are exhausted. You are not broken. Alexander's eyes narrowed. That was not the truth. Shame warmed Clara's face. Around them, whispers spread. Vanessa stepped forward. Your Majesty, she has always been unstable. The pack calls her the broken Omega for a reason. Alexander turned toward her. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. Who gave them that reason? Vanessa stopped. Clara looked down at her hands. She did not want pity. She wanted the ceremony to end before her body betrayed her. 93 days, she admitted. The whispers disappeared. I have not slept properly in 93 days. Elder Hayes stared at her. And the council still ordered you to attend? My name was rejected first. Then a summons arrived. Alexander looked toward the row of council members. Several avoided his gaze. Vanessa moved closer to Clara with a sympathetic smile that reached no deeper than her lips. She should be escorted out before she disrupts the ritual further. The ritual has already been disrupted, Alexander said. By whoever brought an impaired Omega into this hall, wearing silver thread magic. Clara's wolf stirred at the word magic. A pulse of cold spread from the collar into her shoulders. She reached for the thread, but Alexander caught her wrist before she touched it. His grip was firm, careful, and immediately calming. The noise inside her mind faded again. Clara looked at him. For one suspended second, the crowded hall disappeared. She heard the same deep voice that had followed her through every restless dream. Find me. Her breath stopped. It was you, she whispered. Alexander's expression changed. What was me? Before she could answer, Elder Hayes raised the ceremonial cup and called the first candidate toward the altar. The ritual could not be delayed without formal cause, and the council insisted that every name be presented. Alexander released Clara only after making certain she could stand. Remain where I can see you. One by one, the candidates crossed the moonlit floor. Vanessa received the loudest approval from the noble families. Clara received silence when her name was finally called. She stepped from the final row, each footfall heavier than the last. The silver thread grew colder as she approached the throne. At the first stone step, her vision blurred. At the second, Vanessa's white cloak brushed past her from behind. The edge tightened around Clara's ankle. Her balance vanished. The hall turned sideways. She heard someone gasp. Then Alexander moved. His arms closed around her before she reached the floor. Clara tried to apologize, but her cheek settled against his chest. Beneath her ear, his heartbeat was slow and steady. Her wolf curled inward for the first time in months. Safe, it whispered. Clara's eyes closed. Behind Alexander, Vanessa stared at the silver thread now glowing beneath Clara's collar. Clara did not feel the floor beneath her. She felt only the steady rise of Alexander's chest, the warmth of his ceremonial coat, and the deep rhythm beneath her ear. Her body surrendered before her mind could protest. 93 nights of fear loosened all at once. The great hall faded. The whispers disappeared. Even the cold silver thread at her throat seemed distant. Alexander looked down as her breathing changed. It slowed, deepened. Her fingers remained curled against his coat, but the tension left them. She was asleep, truly asleep. In his arms, Elder Hayes lowered the ceremonial cup. The musicians stopped playing. Hundreds of wolves stared toward the throne steps, stunned into silence. Vanessa stood only a few feet away, her white cloak still near Clara's fallen hem. She is pretending, she said. No one answered. Alexander shifted Clara carefully, placing one arm beneath her knees and the other behind her shoulders. She did not wake. Her wolf, faint but present, settled against his presence as though it had finally reached the end of a long journey. Alexander felt the bond pulse once beneath his ribs. His own wolf lowered its head in fierce recognition. Mine. He ignored the claim and listened instead to Clara's exhausted heartbeat. It was too fast for someone sleeping. Too fragile for someone who had been forced to stand through a royal ritual. A guard approached the steps. Your Majesty, shall I take her to the healer? Alexander's gaze lifted. Wake her, and you answer to me. The guard stopped. The words carried through the chamber with enough force to silence even the council. Alexander carried Clara toward the throne and sat with her still protected against his chest. Gasps moved through the noble families. No Alpha King had ever interrupted a mating ceremony. No candidate had ever rested in the royal seat before being chosen. Vanessa recovered first. The ceremony must continue. Every pack has traveled here under sacred law. Alexander looked toward Elder Hayes. Does sacred law require an unconscious woman to be displayed for judgment? No, Your Majesty. Then the ceremony is suspended. Councilman Robert Whitmore, Vanessa's uncle, stepped forward from the council row. Suspending the ritual over one unranked Omega could insult every allied pack in this hall. Alexander's expression hardened. Anyone insulted by compassion may leave. No one moved. Dr. Evelyn Moore entered through the side doors, carrying her wooden medical case. She stopped when she saw Clara in the king's arms, then crossed the hall without hesitation. Alexander allowed her to examine Clara while he continued to hold her steady. Evelyn checked Clara's pulse, eyes, and breathing. Severe exhaustion, she said quietly. Her body has been denied restorative sleep for weeks. Denied? Alexander asked. Evelyn opened the vial she had taken from Clara's room. I found a foreign tonic in her tea this morning. It contains moonroot, winter ash, and powdered silver leaf. In small amounts, it keeps a wolf restless. Repeated doses can weaken scent recognition and prevent deep sleep. A murmur swept through the hall. Vanessa's face remained composed, but her hands closed at her sides. Alexander looked at the silver thread beneath Clara's collar. And that? Evelyn bent closer without touching it. A binding charm. It appears to strengthen the effect. Elder Hayes drew a sharp breath. Someone tried to conceal her mate's scent during the ceremony. Alexander's wolf surged, but he kept his voice controlled. Can you remove it? Not while she is sleeping. The thread has attached itself to the fabric and possibly to her energy. Cutting it carelessly could shock her awake. Clara stirred at the word awake. Her brow tightened. Alexander placed one hand gently over hers. The distress left her face. Evelyn noticed. So did Elder Hayes. She responds to you, the healer whispered. Vanessa stepped forward. That proves nothing. Any exhausted Omega might cling to the nearest source of warmth. Alexander looked at her. Then why did she only collapse when she reached me? Vanessa had no answer. Elder Hayes examined the candidate register. Your Majesty, there is another irregularity. Clara Bennett's name appears in the final list, but the original record shows it was removed 3 times. Councilman Whitmore reached for the book. Alexander closed his hand over it first. Seal every council office. No records leave the citadel. The royal guards moved immediately. Clara breathed his name in her sleep. Not King. Not Your Majesty. Alexander. The hall fell silent for the second time. Then the silver thread beneath her collar began to glow. The silver thread brightened beneath Clara's collar until the moonlight above the throne seemed pale beside it. Evelyn opened her medical case and removed a narrow crystal instrument. Do not move her, she warned. Alexander tightened his hold only enough to keep Clara steady. The thread pulsed again. Clara's breathing changed. Her wolf stirred in distress, trapped between sleep and fear. It is reacting to the bond, Elder Hayes said. The charm was designed to resist recognition. Vanessa stood near the altar, silent now. Councilman Whitmore stepped toward the doors, but 2 royal guards blocked his path. Alexander noticed without looking away from Clara. No one leaves. Evelyn held the crystal near the glowing seam. A faint shadow moved beneath the fabric, tracing a circle around Clara's throat without touching her skin. This charm was activated recently, she said. Within the last 12 hours. Clara's fingers tightened against Alexander's coat. Her lips moved. Do not let them hide me. Alexander felt the words more than heard them. The same phrase had haunted her dreams. He lowered his head. No one will hide you again. The glow weakened for 1 second. Evelyn glanced at him. Keep speaking. Your voice is calming her wolf. Alexander ignored the hundreds of witnesses. You are safe, Clara. You are not alone. Rest. The entire hall watched the Alpha King speak to an Omega with a gentleness few had ever heard from him. Vanessa's face hardened. This is manipulation, she said. She arrived prepared to create a spectacle. Alexander lifted his gaze. Then explain why the thread carries your family's seal. Evelyn turned the collar outward. Hidden beneath the silver weave was a tiny white crest shaped like a winter rose. The Whitmore emblem. A murmur spread through the pack. Vanessa looked toward her uncle. Councilman Whitmore recovered quickly. Our household supplies ceremonial materials to half the northern territories. Anyone could have obtained that thread. Captain Daniel Reed entered from the side corridor carrying a sealed ledger. Not this one. He approached the throne and bowed. The silver thread charm was signed out from the Whitmore estate 3 days ago. The record names a palace attendant assigned to Lady Vanessa. Vanessa's composure slipped. The attendant acted without my knowledge. Then she will confirm that, Alexander said. Captain Reed hesitated. She is gone. The hall grew still. Gone where? Her room was emptied before the ceremony began. Her carriage left through the south gate 2 hours ago. Clara shifted suddenly. The glow at her throat flared. Evelyn pressed the crystal against the edge of the fabric. The charm is feeding on fear. If she wakes in panic, it may tighten its hold. Alexander looked down at Clara. Her face had changed. Sleep no longer brought peace. She was running through the dream again. Red moon. Black trees. A voice calling through the dark. Her wolf pressed against an invisible wall. Alexander closed his eyes and reached for the bond. Not to claim. Not to command. Only to find her. The great hall disappeared from his awareness. For one breath, he stood inside the same dream. Clara was ahead of him beneath the red moon, dressed in gray-blue, one hand at her throat. Silver branches twisted around her path. She turned when she heard him. "You found me," she whispered. "I never stopped looking." He reached for her, and the silver branches recoiled. In the waking world, Clara's body relaxed. The thread dimmed. Evelyn slid the crystal beneath the seam and lifted. A single length of silver loosened from the collar. Then another. The charm fell onto the throne steps and curled like dead frost. Clara drew one deep breath. Cedar and winter rain filled the hall as her true scent finally emerged. Alexander's wolf rose in recognition. Across the chamber, every wolf felt the bond settle into place. Elder Hayes lowered his head. The true mate has been revealed. Vanessa stepped backward. Clara's eyes opened. She looked at Alexander, then at the entire pack staring at her from below. Fear returned to her face. "What did I do?" she asked. Alexander answered before anyone else could. "You survived what someone meant to use against you." Clara remained still in Alexander's arms while the truth settled over the hall. The silver thread lay on the throne steps, dull now, stripped of its power. She looked from Elder Hayes to the rows of watching wolves, then toward Vanessa, who had gone pale beneath the white ceremonial veil. "Why was my name removed?" Clara asked. No one answered at first. Alexander rose with her carefully, but he did not carry her away. He set her on her feet beside the throne and kept one hand near her elbow without touching unless she needed him. The choice mattered. Clara felt it. "Captain Reed," Alexander said, "bring the original candidate records." The captain placed 3 ledgers on the altar. Each showed Clara Bennett written in the same careful hand, then crossed out by order of Councilman Robert Whitmore. On the final list, her name had been restored under a sealed royal directive. Elder Hayes examined the seal. This was issued from the Prophecy Archive. Whitmore's face tightened. "An administrative mistake." 3 times. Clara asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried farther than Vanessa's earlier insults. "Someone worked very hard to make certain I was unseen." Dr. Evelyn stepped beside her. "And someone worked just as hard to weaken you before you arrived." She opened a second vial taken from Clara's room. The tonic in her tea matches residue found in the kitchen jars assigned to the Whitmore household. Vanessa lifted her chin. "That proves only that our servants used the same herbs." "Not these measurements," Evelyn replied. "The mixture was prepared to suppress an omega wolf, blur mate's scent, and prevent restorative sleep without causing immediate collapse." Clara thought of 93 nights spent waking with fear trapped beneath her ribs. She had blamed herself for every trembling hand, every forgotten word, every moment her body failed. The shame had never belonged to her. Alexander saw the realization move across her face. His wolf pressed against him, demanding justice, but he kept his voice controlled. "Why her?" Captain Reed opened the Prophecy Archive. Inside was a drawing made more than 20 years earlier. It showed a woman standing beneath a red moon with a crescent-shaped mark below her left collarbone. Clara instinctively touched the place beneath her dress. Evelyn looked at her. "May I?" Clara nodded. The healer loosened the fabric just enough to reveal the pale birthmark. A crescent crossed by 3 tiny lines. The same mark appeared in the drawing. Elder Hayes read the inscription beneath it. "When the Blackwood King stands without a true mate, the woman born beneath the divided moon will silence the royal wolf and restore balance to the northern packs." The hall erupted in whispers. Clara stared at the page. "You knew?" she asked Vanessa. Vanessa's silence answered before her words did. Councilman Whitmore stepped forward. "Prophecies are symbolic. We protected the throne from uncertainty." Alexander's gaze sharpened. "You poisoned an omega to protect me?" "We protected the alliance," Whitmore said. "Vanessa's marriage would unite the strongest packs. This woman has no rank, no family influence, and no training for court." Clara looked at him fully. For years, men like him had spoken around her as if dignity required permission. This time, she did not lower her eyes. "So you decided exhaustion would make me look unworthy." Whitmore said nothing. Vanessa finally broke. "You were never supposed to reach the throne," she said. "You were meant to stand at the back, fail publicly, and be removed before he recognized you." The confession hung in the air. Alexander moved one step closer to Clara, but let her answer. "You called me broken," Clara said. "Then you spent months trying to break me." Vanessa looked away. Captain Reed placed another document before the king. It carried Whitmore's seal and authorized repeated deliveries of the suppression tonic to Clara's residence. Alexander read it once. Robert Whitmore and Vanessa Whitmore are removed from the council and confined to guarded quarters pending judgment. No one objected. Clara felt relief, but not peace. A final page remained beneath the prophecy drawing. Elder Hayes unfolded it slowly. His expression changed. There is another line. Alexander looked up. Elder Hayes read the warning aloud. If the marked Omega is denied her bond until the red moon rises, the king will not be the only one who loses her. Beyond the high windows, daylight was fading. The moon had already begun to turn red. The red moon climbed behind the stained glass windows, while the great hall remained sealed. Clara felt its light before she looked up. A pressure moved through the room, not painful, but ancient. Her wolf lifted its head. Across from her, Alexander's silver-gray eyes changed, brightening as the bond between them strengthened. Elder Hayes held the prophecy with both hands. The final line is not a command to claim her, he said. It is a warning about continued suppression. Her wolf has been denied recognition for too long. Clara's breath caught. What happens if the moon reaches its highest point? Dr. Evelyn answered carefully. The charm is gone, but the tonic remains in your body. The bond is trying to restore what was taken from you. If you resist because you are afraid, your wolf may retreat completely. Vanessa, guarded near the council doors, gave a bitter laugh. Then let the king complete the bond now. That is what everyone expects. Alexander turned toward her. Expectation is not consent. The words silenced the room. He looked back at Clara and stepped away, giving her space even as every instinct urged him closer. No prophecy will choose for you, he said. No council will decide what happens to your life. Clara stared at him. For months, others had controlled what she drank, where she stood, and whether her name remained on a list. Now the most powerful man in the northern packs was refusing to use power against her. Her wolf quieted, not because it had been ordered, because it believed him. I need air, Clara said. Alexander nodded. Then the hall opens for you. Captain Reed unsealed a side door leading into the moon courtyard. Clara stepped outside beneath the red light. Snow covered the stone paths, and winter roses climbed the walls and pale vines. Alexander followed several feet behind. He did not speak until she stopped beneath a silver arch. I heard your voice in my dreams, she said. You told me to find you. I heard yours too. Clara turned. What did I say? His expression softened. You asked why no one could see you. The answer struck deeper than she expected. She looked toward the moon. I thought I was failing. Every night, every morning, I believed the weakness belonged to me. It did not. You cannot know that. I know what your body did when it felt safe. He did not say in my arms. He did not need to. Clara remembered the silence inside herself, the steady heartbeat, the first true sleep in 93 nights. The bond warmed beneath her skin. Then fear returned. What if I accept this only because my wolf needs relief? Alexander's voice remained calm. Then accept nothing tonight. He removed the royal signet from his hand and placed it on the stone ledge between them. I will stand beside you without title, claim, or ceremony. Choose me later, or do not choose me at all. Clara looked at the ring, then at the man who had stopped an entire pack to protect her rest. Behind the courtyard doors, voices rose. Captain Reed appeared. Your Majesty, Councilman Whitmore is missing. Alexander's expression hardened. The guards were watching him. They found his ceremonial cloak in the west corridor. The south gate is open. Evelyn rushed into the courtyard, holding the vial of tonic. There is more, she said. The mixture does not only suppress a mate bond. It can transfer its force into another vessel during a red moon. Elder Hayes followed, carrying the final page of the prophecy. If Whitmore reaches the lunar chamber before midnight, he can redirect the bond and make the pack recognize a false queen. Clara felt the red moon pulse above them. From somewhere deep inside the citadel, a ceremonial bell rang once. Vanessa smiled from behind the guards. You are too late, she whispered. Then every torch along the courtyard walls went dark. Darkness covered the courtyard for one breath. Then the red moonlight returned, spilling across the snow and turning every silver surface crimson. Alexander moved first. Seal the lunar chamber. Captain Reed and the royal guards crossed the courtyard at once. Clara followed before anyone could stop her. The bond pulled beneath her ribs, not toward danger, but toward truth. Alexander reached for her hand, then paused. Clara closed the distance herself and placed her fingers in his. I am choosing to come. Together they entered the western passage. The lunar chamber stood beneath the oldest tower of Blackridge Citadel, nearly 200 feet from the Great Hall. Its bronze doors were open. Inside, Councilman Whitmore stood before a circular altar surrounded by silver mirrors. Vanessa's ceremonial veil lay across the stone, and the missing palace attendant held a glass vessel filled with pale light. Whitmore raised his hands as Clara and Alexander entered. The pack needs stability, not an untrained Omega chosen by accident. This was never an accident, Clara said. Her voice did not shake. Whitmore turned toward the vessel. The bond can still be redirected. The pack will recognize Vanessa, and the Northern Alliance will remain intact. Elder Hayes arrived behind them and looked at the mirrors. Only if Clara surrenders her will. Whitmore smiled. She has been surrendering it for months. The words might once have broken her. Now they clarified everything. Clara remembered the bitter tea, the sleepless nights, and every whisper calling her weak. None of it had revealed who she was. It had only shown how much effort others needed to silence her. She stepped toward the altar. Alexander stayed beside her without pulling her back. What are you doing? Whitmore asked. Clara looked into the vessel. The pale light inside it trembled like a frightened heartbeat. Taking back what belongs to me. She placed one hand over her crescent birthmark and the other against Alexander's open palm. Not because a prophecy ordered me. Not because the pack expects it. I choose the man who protected my freedom before asking for my bond. Silver light moved between their hands. The mirrors brightened. Whitmore tried to speak the ceremonial words, but the vessel went dark. Vanessa's veil slipped from the altar and fell soundlessly to the floor. Clara's wolf rose inside her, no longer pacing, no longer hidden. The bond spread through the chamber and into the citadel, warm and clear. Every wolf in Blackridge felt the difference between obedience and truth. Captain Reed escorted Whitmore and the attendant away under royal guard. Vanessa was removed from the ceremony and later stripped of council protection pending judgment. Alexander did not announce Clara as queen that night. He brought her to a quiet royal chamber, left the door open, and asked Evelyn to remain nearby. Clara slept until morning. When she woke, Alexander was seated several feet away, reading council reports beneath the window. You stayed, she said. I said I would. Hours later, the entire pack gathered again in the Great Hall. Clara entered wearing the same gray-blue dress, now free of silver thread. No one laughed. Alexander stood before the throne without his crown. The bond has been confirmed, he said, but the choice remains hers. Then he faced Clara and extended his hand. Will you stand beside me freely? Clara looked at the nobles who had called her broken, the council members who had ignored her, and the Omegas watching from the back rows. She placed her hand in his. I was never broken, she said. I was only kept from the place where I could finally rest. The hall became silent again. This time, Clara did not mistake silence for judgment. One by one, the pack lowered their heads. Alexander lifted her hand, not as possession, but acknowledgement. Beneath the morning light, Clara stood beside the Alpha King by choice, and the wolves who had once overlooked her bowed to the future queen they could no longer deny.